Welcome, we had a webinar sponsored by Celotex Building Magazine on the route to zero carbon. Very popular, lots of questions. I'd like to answer one of those questions for you now. It came in from Adam Harper, and he was asking the questions about the small site development and the exemption of zero carbon to small sites. Isn't that a dangerous precedent? So it means that depending on the number of plots you have, you can be actually excused from building regulations. I can see why you're asking that question. It's an interesting one. And the nature of zero carbon is such that the way it's shaping up, it looks like to hit zero carbon, you're going to have to really deal with the offsetting. Now let me just try and illustrate that for you. I'm going to draw a very basic house here. Now, at the moment, how do we measure carbon? Well, it's under Part L of the building regs. So this house will give off a certain amount of CO2. Not the house itself, of course, because it's actually the fuel that's used to power it that has CO2 attached to it. So this house will be responsible for a certain amount of CO2. And the building regs, part of the building regs says that must not be higher than a certain number. So going forward to whatever we arrive at in 2016, the building regs part, the CO2 part, will be contained within Part L. So a small site, I believe, will still have to hit the basic Part L requirements. Now what they are, we're still not quite sure, but it looks like it's going to actually, in Part L 2016, it's going to be the requirements that were first proposed in Part L 2013. So we'll get there eventually, a bit late, but never mind. So in terms of small sites, it's going to have to comply with Part L, and the bit that makes it zero carbon is this offsetting of carbon, this allowable solutions. So it may be that in reality, if this goes through, if you develop a small number of houses and you're exempt from zero carbon, what you're actually exempt from is allowable solutions. So you've still got to hit the requirements of Part L and all the rest of the various documents like ventilation, Part F, and the bit that you might be exempt from is allowable solutions. So if that goes through, it may not necessarily be as bad as you first think. It's not chucking out all the building regulations. The only bit it's chucking out is allowable solutions. However, the caveat on that is the election's coming up. There are different ideas from Labour and the Conservatives. So therefore, we don't actually quite know what's going to happen. And if it's a coalition again, the Lib Dems will have their say, I'm sure. So it's all a bit up in the air, but it may mean that whilst it's concerning, I don't think it's going to be quite as bad as it's a small site, therefore we'll chuck everything out. It's not quite that straightforward. Hopefully it helps to answer your question. It's a complex subject, but hopefully I've managed to simplify it with my very fine drawings a little bit for you. Okay, thank you very much.